What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to learn about adding a custom blur view in your SwiftUI app. So here's one of the examples we're going to do. We've got this cool sunset image in the background, and of course we've got this dark system blur on top of it. So we'll take a look at how to configure the style of the blur so you're not stuck with just one style in case you want to go and be a little fancy with it. So if that sounds good, make sure you start by destroying that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Helps out a lot. If you're into iOS and Swift, definitely hit subscribe while you're at it to stick around. That all said, let's get into the video. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're gonna stick with the app template under iOS, and let's go ahead and give this project a name of SwiftUI Blur View. You wanna make sure your language is set to Swift and both your lifecycle and interface are set to SwiftUI. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. I'll toss it onto my desktop here. And first things first, I grabbed a image from Google Images that we're gonna apply the blur view on top of to blur it out. You can use your own view or your own image, whatever works for you, but we do need to bring this into the project. So we're gonna jump into our assets folder here and simply drag this guy in. Once we've done that, we can close this right panel. We can go ahead and expand our Xcode window. And let's go ahead and change our preview device in the drop down here to a 12 Pro Max and hit this resume button to load up our preview in the canvas on the right hand side over here. There it is, and let's jump into it. So first and foremost, let's create our image that we will blur out. So I am going to create a Z stack, and the reason we need this is because we want the blur view that we create to be on top of, on the Z axis, the image. So we need a Z stack. The next thing we want is a geometry reader with a proxy, which will allow us to get the frame to make the image the entire size of our view. So let's go ahead and bring that in. And then inside of here, we want to bring in our image, which is a sunset. We're going to make this guy resizable, and we're going to derive a frame out of this proxy, which is going to be frame in the global space. We're going to use the frame modifier to specify the width and the height. So there is the width, and we'll go ahead and copy and paste that for the height and adjust this to be height and drop the trailing comma there. Let me also go ahead and close or collapse, I should say, this right side so it's not so big. But there is our image, so looking pretty good. One thing that I'd like to adjust is I don't want the safe area on the top and the bottom. So on the Z stack, I am going to go ahead and say ignore safe area for all and all edges. That way the image is going to take up the entirety of our device here. And now it's time to make our blur view. So we're going to create it right down here. We're going to call it a blur view, and it's going to conform to UI view representable. And this basically requires us to provide a type and two functions. So we're going to go ahead and implement make UI view, and we want update UI view. And what we want to do is we want to change this UI view type here to the type of view that we're going to want to go ahead and deal with here, which is going to be a, let's see if I can change it. There we go. A UI visual effect view. We'll change that there, and we'll change it right there. So we're not going to update anything, so we can say do nothing in here. But in here, we want to go ahead and create a UI visual effect view with a UI blur effect, and this guy takes in a style. So instead of hard coding the style here, what we're going to do is we're just going to create a style constant, which is initialized in this blur view, and that gives our view flexibility to use any of the different blur styles. So this is going to be UI blur effect dot style. So that is the basics of how this is going to work. Let me go ahead and line break this to make it look a little nicer. And now it's time to actually use this blur view, which is pretty simple. So we're going to want to use a geometry reader again. So the blur view takes up the entirety of our screen. So it's on top of the image. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it. And in here, we're going to go ahead and say we want a blur view, and we're going to pass in the style, which is what we declared right down here. And there's a lot of styles you can pick from that are baked into UIKit. We've got all the light ones. I'm going to go with the maybe system. Let's see. Let's go with system thin material. and we'll see what that ends up looking like. Let's go with dark. And one thing to note is if you hit resume over here in your preview, you're gonna see this, and this is not what actually shows up on device. Now this is a bit of what I would call a preview bug where it doesn't account the runtime properly. So let's go ahead and hit the play button to actually build and run this in a simulator, and you'll see what the actual result looks like. So bear with my Xcode here. What you'll actually end up with is a proper blur on top of your image. So let's wait for Xcode to do its thing over here. It's being slow because it must know I'm doing a video, but this is what you actually get. So very different from this monstrosity on the right hand side. So you get a really nice blur view. It's on top of the image. And some of you might be wondering, well, there's a blur modifier. Why not use that instead? The reason is because this actually gives you a lot more flexibility to use this blur view on top of other views, and you can also control what the blur looks like. So let's keep this visual in your head, and let's go ahead and tweak this. So let's say we want to use the light style instead. If we take a look at what this looks like, this actually changes it entirely. So the point is, when you create this custom UI view representable, which is fairly minimal here, we're just wrapping a visual effect view, you can customize things far more so versus if you just used a modifier. So that's all I had for you guys today. That's a blur view. I've got a bunch of videos coming that leverage the blur view for some pretty cool animations, and even things like having like a slide up drawer on top of this, which blurs the background out as you're, sliding it up. And then we'll also do some videos on if you have like some type of in-app purchase and you want to blur out some feature if the user, isn't a subscriber to your app, and once they purchase it, we can unblur it. So all of those things are available to you. I've also got a separate video on what SwiftUI calls a placeholder modifier. So do check that out as well. That is also a type of kind of skeleton view. It's not exactly a blur, but I'll let you guys dig into that if you so choose to. So that's all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video and haven't done so already, make sure you smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Hit subscribe if you're into iOS and want to stick around. Keep this channel going and growing together. And don't hesitate to leave a comment down below if you have any video suggestions, feedback, ideas. If you just want to say hi, I always love hearing from you guys, and I do my best to reply to all comments within a reasonable amount of time. So thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.